Joining me today is New Hampshire State Representative Steve Smith. Steve, thanks so much for being here.
Thanks for having me.
I want to sort of start, now that the biennium in New Hampshire is over, sort of with your reflections on what you think some of the major issues were that the legislature grappled with, and sort of, and maybe even some of the things that you still need to work with. But if you look back on the biennium, what sticks out in your mind?
Well, the House was run fairly efficiently. We didn't have a lot of late nights, and that probably doesn't mean a lot to the public, but it
certainly does to the people that work there.
Yes, and generally you get a good result when you stay organized and there aren't a lot of curveballs. The overshadowing issue, probably among everything, was the ineptly called expanded Medicaid bill. I hate it when they give a law a name, because a lot of times the name doesn't have anything to do with the law. We did not expand Medicaid. We used Medicaid federal funds to create a program where people could get private health insurance. So I think when you name it, there's a perception, oh my goodness, they're throwing 30 or 50,000 people on Medicaid. We could never afford to do that. That's not what it was. I think that bill was a good solution. It was a hard-fought political battle on both sides. And essentially what we did was we had healthcare providers saying, if you do this, we'll have all this money coming into the state from the federal reimbursements. And then the other side says, yes, but the federal government doesn't do its first job very often, which is to create and pass a budget. So how do we know the money will come? So we didn't want to put your tax dollars on the hook in exchange for reimbursement that may never arrive. So instead, we said to all the people that stand to make a boatload of money on this, the insurance companies, the healthcare providers that were all testifying before us, fine. You think there's so much market potential here? You put up $35 million, since it's going into your payroll anyway. And they did. So essentially now we are in a put up or shut up situation, which I love. It has a sunset, 2 years. If everything that they said is true, all the market predictions that they used to sell this to us are true, in 2 years, they're going to come back and say, look how successful this was without taking any tax dollars, and we'll reauthorize it. Or they have to come back and say, sorry, we didn't get there, and then essentially the argument is finally over, because this has been going on 5 or 6 years.
So what happened with the bill that was passed is, and I may be slightly off on the math, but the federal government was going to pay for 95%. The state has to pay the 5%, and maybe it's 6, maybe it's 4. And what the legislature said was, look, at either through a tax or a fee structure, hospitals, insurance companies, healthcare providers, you pay that 5%, and you pay that, you get access to the other 95%. We're in compliance. Low-income people get access to health insurance. Win, win, win.
Yes.
And if that works out, do you think it'll be reauthorized?
I would hope so. I mean, if we can create a program that allows people to buy health insurance that they want, they're not particularly good. I don't know if you've gone to the exchange, but the deductibles are astronomical, but nonetheless, it does protect you if you have major hospitalization. That's important. Yeah, if it's successful, I would think it would be an easy reauthorization, because again, we didn't commit tax dollars to it, and the initial arguments against straight up expanding Medicaid are that wherever you are on the politics of it, the math is that New Hampshire can't afford it. We just don't have the tax revenue to do that. And I don't think the taxpayers want us to create a system that would generate that much money. I mean, it would be like $500 to $1,000 for every family in New Hampshire just to get started. And that's assuming that the federal government follows through down the road, which it's difficult to trust.
We got a minute left. What's another issue that you think, when you reflect back on the biennium, that was an important thing we tackled?
Oh, there were quite a few. We'll talk about a couple that came through my committee. There was one interesting one, aftermarket parts on your car. This was the largest hearing I had. We had 3.5 hours of testimony in my committee. It turns out, if you got a car that's a year or two old and you get in a crash, they can require your insurance company that they don't put original equipment parts back on it. This turned into the biggest thing that I saw, even overshadowing, and it brought in areas of intellectual property. Do the aftermarket companies actually own the design to the fender? I mean, it was fascinating. That that's probably the one I spent the most time on. It involved insurance law, 3 different committees, and we eventually passed it. So if your 2-year-old car gets crashed, it'll still be the original car.
So no, you can't. The insurance companies can't require aftermarket parts
On a 2-year-old car or newer.
on a 2-year-old or newer. But if you have a 4-year-old car,
Well,
you
then
get what you get.
You get what you get.
All right, well, we're out of time in this segment, but we're going to continue our conversation focusing on other major issues, including the opioid crisis. So please stay with us.